All right, this is going to be the very first video of our Animal Farm series of videos where I read and discuss the entire novel to you and with you so that you can get through it in good order. Animal Farm is not a very difficult read on the surface, but it is an allegory, so there's a lot of meaning behind all the layers. And I can't even claim to know everything that George Orwell meant by it, but it makes for a lot of really good discussions. It's kind of weird to teach this in a distance learning setting because normally what Animal Farm does is it makes for a lot of really good discussion. So we'll try to simulate that the best we can by using these Zoom videos and our Thursday meetings from 10:30 to 12:30 when folks can come in and discuss with me the novel and the assignments go with it. So before we get started, I'm going to actually talk about each section of the packet. Now these are in mirror to you, so it's going to look a little weird, but this one tells us about how these are the directions and it gives you some ideas about what's in the packet. Then there is a short list of online resources that follows 3 pages right here that are historical information. They're about the Russian Revolution and some of the major figures in it. In particular, Leon Trotsky and Joseph Stalin. They were 2 of the big players in both the Bolshevik or Russian Revolution and also the growth of communism in Russia, the Soviet Union. Okay, so following that though, there's this interesting piece of paper, and I think you'll be able to see even in the mirror image what I'm holding up here, that has a picture of somebody, their name or social status, and it leaves a space for you to put what the equivalent in the book is. So this book is kind of like a fairy tale. Let's take, for instance, Little Red Riding Hood. So more like, like a little kid's story, right? The wolf isn't just a wolf. The wolf actually represents all of the dangers out there that a kid could run into if they aren't careful, if they don't stay on the path they've been told to follow, if they break the rules, if they don't listen to their parents. The wolf represents all of that danger. In this book, all of the animals are representatives. They aren't really just animals. They represent a social class or even a particular person in history. So keep that in mind. And so this will help you as you go along. If you do the pre-reading and read some of this history here, and maybe you want to look on the internet and read more about Animal Farm or read more about the Russian Revolution, this can get filled out pretty easily once you get to know all that stuff. And it will come into some play when you do the assessment at the end. And I'll show you that in a second. Okay, this page also mirrored, all of it will be mirrored to you. This is the vocab page. This is just a list of words that knowing what they mean is going to be very useful. Words like allegory, what I just mentioned, which is a story in which people, things, and happenings have a hidden or symbolic meaning. Animalism, which is an actual word in our vocabulary too, but it talks about how animals, that humans are animals, and so they are just the same as is part of it. Antagonist is the person who's against the protagonist. We've learned these words before. The protagonist is like the main character of the story, and an antagonist would be somebody that they are in conflict with. Conflict is the next word. You're supposed to know that by now. We learned that in the short stories unit. And it's got a few other things, like more specific to the story, like what a dictator is, what is propaganda, what is a rebellion, what is a revolution, satire, because this is all satire. It is calling into notice some political situation in a way that is easier to approach than just saying, here, read a history book. This is telling a story in order to teach about the situation and expose the bad things, okay? And totalitarianism, that's a method of government or a state in which one group maintains complete control and bans all others. And tyranny, oppressive and unjust government. So as you can see, this is going to be a lot about government. And normally studying government is both difficult and sometimes boring. This is a way to look at the effects of government in a broader sense using literature as a place to discuss what happens in real life and what happened in history. Okay, so with this, you get something called the Animal Farm discussion pages. You have discussion number 1, discussion number 2, discussion number 3. And we are going to keep discussion number 1 near us because chapters 1 through 4 deal with that. And since we're going to be reading chapter 1, then we're going to be answering the questions on here that have to do with chapter 1. And the good news is I'm going to walk you through any of the ones that you needed to do after chapter 1. Okay. Then behind those, you'll have one that's got this picture of a pig on it. And that's the novel unit study guide. And it is before you take the test, you need to do the things that are on here and know the things that are on here before you take the test. So once you've read this and you go, got it, then you're ready to do that. Okay. And behind it are the related readings. There are several. One's called The Story of Mouseland. It's a very, very short allegory. So it's another one of the genre that you get to practice on. The next one is a poem called One More Round, and it is on the same page as a copy of Beasts of England, which comes directly from the novel that we're reading, and they're there for comparison. Then there's a teeny tiny fable, literally a fable, and like Aesop's fable, this big on the page for you to read, that is also a comparison to the story. And then finally, a political cartoon. You have a lot of political cartoons in your future as a Mossy Rock student, and this is your first time to really look at one and try to decide what does it mean and how does it compare to the story that we are studying. And finally, back here, we have the unit exam. The unit exam is a mix. It has some multiple choice, but even the multiple choices, you have to put down your evidence. So pay attention to that. That's half the score. Okay. And then there's a section here where you have to answer mostly about just Animal Farm, but following that, and those are short answers, so make sure you use plenty of text evidence. Part 3 has in it questions that are to do with the related readings. The related readings are required, so you have to do them before you take the test to be able to do well. You can have them all with you when you take it, so you can look back and forth at it all you like, okay? And finally, an extended response where you have to do some very specific questions, and at the bottom, that's where the extra credit is. But if you've done your background checking there and you figured out what everybody symbolizes, you're going to get a lot of extra credit. This should be an extraordinarily easy unit if you do the work. If you listen to these videos, sorry, I'm going to subject you to me reading a lot. If you listen to these videos and you do the reading discussion questions with me, and then you do those related readings, if you come to our Zoom meetings on Thursdays at 10:30 and you ask questions of things that you do not understand, you'll be able to do very well on this unit. You get to take the quiz over the exam over time with all the materials with you, and after asking any question you want to. The whole point of this is that you come away from this understanding the story well and understanding all the concepts behind the story. It's a classic. It's been around for a lot of years, and everybody that I've taught it to, or nearly everybody I've taught it to, has said it's worth reading. And my students have told me that this was the unit not to skip at the end of the year. So we're going to give it a shot in a distance learning format. Okay, so the way this works is I read off my phone, and I don't know if you can see this. Yeah, okay. There's the Gutenberg press, which is named after the guy who invented the printing press. And the Gutenberg press puts all these royalty-free classics online. You can read Animal Farm anywhere you go, on your phone, whatever device you have. So I'm going to be reading off my phone to you, and I'm going to do one chapter at a time. So each video will have one chapter and some discussion at the end about the questions that pertain to it. So here we go. We're going to get started. Animal Farm, chapter 1. And let's do this. Mr. Jones of the Manor Farm had locked the hen houses for the night, but was too drunk to remember to shut the pop holes. With the ring of light from his lantern dancing from side to side, he lurched across the yard, kicked off his boots at the back door, drew himself a last glass of beer from the barrel in the scullery, and made his way up to bed where Mrs. Jones was already snoring. As soon as the light in the bedroom went out, there was a stirring and a fluttering all through the farm buildings. Word had gone round during the day that old Major, the prize middle white boar, had had a strange dream on the previous night and wished to communicate it to the other animals. It had been agreed that they should all meet in the big barn as soon as Mr. Jones was safely out of the way. Old Major, so he was always called, though the name under which he had been exhibited was Willingdon Beauty, was so highly regarded on the farm that everyone was quite ready to lose an hour's sleep in order to hear what he had to say. At one end of the big barn, on a sort of raised platform, Major was already ensconced in his bed of straw, under a lantern which hung from a beam. He was 12 years old and had lately grown rather stout, but he was still a majestic-looking pig, with a wise and benevolent appearance, in spite of the fact that his tushes, the little things stick out, had never been cut. Before long, the other animals began to arrive and make themselves comfortable after their different fashions. First came the 3 dogs, Bluebell, Jessie, and Pincher, and then the pigs, who settled down in the straw immediately in front of the platform. The hens perched themselves at the windowsills, the pigeons fluttered up to the rafters, the sheep and cows lay down behind the pigs and began to chew the cud. The 2 cart horses, Boxer and Clover, came in together, walking very slowly and setting down their vast hairy hooves with great care, lest there should be some small animal concealed in the straw. Clover was a stout, motherly mare, approaching middle life, who had never quite got her figure back after her 4th foal. Boxer was an enormous beast, nearly 18 hands high, and as strong as any 2 ordinary horses put together. A white stripe down his nose gave him a somewhat stupid appearance, and in fact, he was not of first-rate intelligence. But he was universally respected for his steadiness of character and tremendous powers of work. After the horses came Muriel, the white goat, and Benjamin, the donkey. Benjamin was the oldest animal on the farm and the worst tempered. He seldom talked, and when he did, it was usually to make some cynical remark. For instance, he would say that God had given him a tail to keep the flies off, but that he would sooner have no tail and no flies. Alone among the animals on the farm, he never laughed. If asked why, he would say that he saw nothing to laugh at. Nevertheless, without openly admitting it, he was devoted to Boxer. The 2 of them usually spent their Sundays together in the small paddock beyond the orchard, grazing side by side and never speaking. The 2 horses had just lain down when a brood of ducklings, which had lost their mother, filed into the barn, cheeping feebly and wandering from side to side to find some place where they would not be trodden on. Clover made a sort of wall round them with her great foreleg, and the ducklings nestled down inside it and promptly fell asleep. At the last moment, Molly, the foolish, pretty white mare who drew Mr. Jones's trap, came mincing daintily in, chewing at a lump of sugar. She took a place near the front and began flirting her white mane, hoping to draw attention to the red ribbons in it was plaited with. Last of all came the cat, who looked round, as usual, for the warmest place, and finally squeezed herself in between Boxer and Clover. There she purred contentedly throughout Major's speech, without listening to a word of what he was saying. All the animals were now present except Moses, the tame raven, who slept on a perch behind the back door. When Major saw that they had made themselves comfortable and were waiting attentively, he cleared his throat and began. Comrades, you have heard already about the strange dream that I had last night, but I will come to the dream later. I have something else to say first. I do not think, comrades, that I shall be with you for many months longer, and before I die, I feel it my duty to pass on to you such wisdom as I have acquired. I have had a long life. I have had much time for thought as I lay alone in my stall, and I think I may say that I understand the nature of life on this earth as well as any animal now living. It is about this that I wish to speak to you. Now, comrades, what is the nature of this life of ours? Let us face it. Our lives are miserable, laborious, and short. We are born, we are given just so much food as will keep the breath in our bodies, and those of us who are capable of it are forced to work to the last atom of our strength. And the very instant that our usefulness has come to an end, we are slaughtered with hideous cruelty. No animal in England knows the meaning of happiness or leisure after he is a year old. No animal in England is free. The life of an animal is misery and slavery. That is the plain truth. But is this simply part of the order of nature? Is it because this land of ours is so poor that it cannot afford a decent life to those who dwell upon it? No, comrades, 1,000 times no. The soil of England is fertile. Its climate is good. It is capable of affording food in abundance to an enormously greater number of animals than now inhabit it. This single farm of ours would support a dozen horses, 20 cows, hundreds of sheep, and all of them living in a comfort and a dignity that are now almost beyond our imagining. Why then do we continue in this miserable condition? Because nearly the whole of the produce of our labor is stolen from us by human beings. There, comrades, is the answer to all our problems. It is summed up in a single word: man. Man is the only real enemy we have. Remove man from the scene, and the root cause of hunger and overwork is abolished forever. Man is the only creature that consumes without producing. He does not give milk. He does not lay eggs. He is too weak to pull the plow. He cannot run fast enough to catch rabbits. Yet he is Lord of all the animals. He sets them to work. He gives back to them the bare minimum that will prevent them from starving, and the rest he keeps for himself. Our labor tills the soil. Our dung fertilizes it, and yet there is not one of us that owns more than his bare skin. You cows that I see before me, how many thousands of gallons of milk have you given during this last year? And what has happened to that milk, which should have been breeding up sturdy calves? Every drop of it has gone down the throats of our enemies. And you hens, how many eggs have you laid in this last year? And how many of those eggs ever hatched into chickens? The rest have all gone to market to bring in money for Jones and his men. And you, Clover, where are those 4 foals you bore, who should have been the support and pleasure of your old age? Each was sold at a year old. You will never see one of them again. In return for your 4 confinements and all your labor in the fields, what have you ever had except your bare rations and a stall? And even the miserable lives we lead are not allowed to reach their natural span. For myself, I do not grumble, for I am one of the lucky ones. I am 12 years old and have had over 400 children. Such is the natural life of a pig. But no animal escapes the cruel knife in the end. You young porkers who are sitting in front of me, every one of you will scream your lives out at the block within a year. To that horror we all must come. Cows, pigs, hens, sheep, everyone. Even the horses and the dogs have no better fate. You, boxer, the very day that those great muscles of yours lose their power, Jones will sell you to the knacker, who will cut your throat and boil you down for the foxhounds. As for the dogs, when they grow old and toothless, Jones ties a brick round their necks and drowns them in the nearest pond. Is it not crystal clear then, comrades, that all the evils of this life of ours spring from the tyranny of human beings? Only get rid of man, and the produce of our labor would be our own. Almost overnight, we become rich and free. What then must we do? Why, work night and day, body and soul, for the overthrow of the human race. That is my message to you, comrades. Rebellion. I do not know when that rebellion will come. It might be in a week or in 100 years, but I know as surely as I see the straw beneath my feet that sooner or later justice will be done. Fix your eyes on that, comrades, throughout the short remainder of your lives, and above all, pass on this message of mine to those who come after you, so that your future generations shall carry on the struggle until it is victorious. And remember, comrades, your resolution must never falter. No argument must lead you astray. Never listen when they tell you that man and the animals have a common interest, that the prosperity of the one is the prosperity of the others. It is all lies. Man serves the interests of no creature except himself. And among us animals, let there be perfect unity, perfect comradeship in the struggle. All men are enemies. All animals are comrades. At this moment, there was a tremendous uproar. While Major was speaking, 4 large rats had crept out of their holes and were sitting on their hindquarters, listening to him. The dogs had suddenly caught sight of them, and it was only by a swift dash for their holes that the rats saved their lives. Major raised his trotter for silence. Comrades, he said, there is a point that must be settled. The wild creatures, such as rats and rabbits, are they our friends or our enemies? Let us put it to the vote. I propose this question to the meeting. Are rats comrades? The vote was taken at once, and it was agreed by an overwhelming majority that the rats were comrades. There were only 4 dissentients, the 3 dogs and the cat, who was afterwards discovered to have voted on both sides. Major continued. I have little more to say. I merely repeat, remember always your duty of enmity towards man and all his ways. Whatever goes upon 2 legs is an enemy. Whatever goes upon 4 legs or has wings is a friend. And remember also that in fighting against man, we must not come to resemble him. Even when you have conquered him, do not adopt his vices. No animal must ever live in a house or sleep in a bed, or wear clothes, or drink alcohol, or smoke tobacco, or touch money, or engage in trade. All the habits of man are evil. And above all, no animal must ever tyrannize over his own kind, weak or strong, clever or simple. We are all brothers. No animal must ever kill any other animal. All animals are equal. And now, comrades, I will tell you about my dream of last night. I cannot describe the dream to you. It was a dream of the earth as it will be when man has vanished. But it reminded me of something that I had long forgotten. Many years ago, when I was a little pig, my mother and the other sows used to sing an old song of which they knew only the tune and the first 3 words. I had known that tune in my infancy, but it had long since passed out of my mind. Last night, however, it came back to me in a dream, and what is more, the words of the song also came back. Words, I am certain, which were sung by the animals of long ago and have been lost to memory for generations. I will sing you that song now, comrades. I am old and my voice is hoarse, but when I have taught you the tune, you can sing it better for yourselves. It is called Beasts of England. Old Major cleared his throat and began to sing. As he had said, his voice was hoarse, but he sang well enough, and it was a stirring tune, something between Clementine and La Cucaracha. And the words ran, I'm just going to read them, I'm not going to sing them to you. Beasts of England, beasts of England, beasts of every land and clime, hearken to my joyful tidings of the golden future time. Soon or late the day is coming, tyrant man shall be o'erthrown, and the fruitful fields of England shall be trod by beasts alone. Rings shall vanish from our noses, and the harness from our back. Bit and spur shall rest forever, cruel whips no more shall crack. Riches more than mine can picture, wheat and barley, oats and hay, clover, beans, and mangel-wurzels shall be ours upon that day. Bright will shine the fields of England, purer shall its waters be, sweeter yet shall blow its breezes on the day that sets us free. For that day we all must labor, though we die before it break. Cows and horses, geese and turkeys, all must toil for freedom's sake. Beasts of England, beasts of Ireland, beasts of every land and clime, hearken well and spread my tidings of the golden future time. The singing of this song threw the animals into the wildest excitement. Almost before Major had reached the end, they had begun singing it for themselves. Even the stupidest of them had already picked up the tune and a few of the words. And as for the clever ones, such as the pigs and dogs, they had the entire song by heart within a few minutes. And then, after a few preliminary tries, the whole farm burst out into Beasts of England in tremendous unison. The cows lowed it, the dogs whined it, the sheep bleated it, the horses whinnied it, the ducks quacked it. They were so delighted with the song that they sang it right through 5 times in succession, and might have continued singing it all night if they had not been interrupted. Unfortunately, the uproar awoke Mr. Jones, who sprang out of bed, making sure that there was a fox in the yard. He seized the gun, which always stood in a corner of his bedroom, and let fly a charge of number 6 shot into the darkness. The pellets buried themselves in the wall of the barn, and the meeting broke up hurriedly. Everyone fled to his own sleeping place. The birds jumped onto their perches, the animals settled down in the straw, and the whole farm was asleep in a moment. And that was chapter 1. So we're going to look here and see if we can answer any of the questions about the first bit here. The first one says, what is the main conflict in the story in the first chapter? All right. So we have Old Major calling everybody together for a meeting, and he proposes what he believes to be the problem. Okay, he's talking about how animals everywhere are basically mistreated, that they live these rough, short lives that end in slaughter, that they get fed just enough to live, and they get worked over hard if they're able to work, and that the problem is human beings, man. And so the main conflict is the conflict between the animals and their oppressors, human beings. Now, this isn't, so that you don't get the wrong impression, this isn't like something that PETA wants you to read. This isn't really about like be a vegetarian. It really, really is not. It's it's a political allegory. So when you read this, you have to think about, well, who are the animals and who is the man? And it is about like whoever's in control, political control, the people who control the economic power, they are the man, and the animals are the ones that are doing all the work and providing all the resources. Okay, so he's saying, look, we are being badly treated. We have to rebel. There has to be a rebellion against man. So the main conflict in the story, in the first chapter, is that man is abusing and oppressing the animals, and the animals need to rebel according to their leader, Old Major. Okay, please use complete sentences to get full credit. All right, number 2, how does Old Major want to resolve this conflict? Rebellion. He wants them to rise up and take back all the resources for themselves. As soon as they get rid of man, everything belongs to them again. They have to get rid of man and then not act like man when they get to that point, not to be like him, not to do the things that man does. And why is it important for the animals to decide whether wild animals are friends or enemies? Well, on the surface level, it's because the dogs wanted to kill the rats, and you have to decide, well, I mean, are we all in this together? I mean, are the rats our allies in the fight against man? And because Major didn't have that, he wanted the group to decide. And it sounds like most of the group decided that all animals were in it together, even the ones that weren't domesticated animals. So the rats are part of the animal kingdom, and therefore would be their allies. Now, the dogs just wanted to attack them. But, and the cat, remember, voted on both sides. Kind of important. The cat's a certain type of character. How does Old Major summarize the difference between friends and enemies? Now, it's really important, actually, because this comes up later. He says that if you're on 4 legs or you have wings, that's good. If you walk on 2 legs, that's bad. Now, kind of important, the pigs are smart. Pigs and dogs, it tells you that. The pigs and dogs are smart. There's certain animals that are really good at picking up on things and some that are kind of dumb, okay? In this case, all of the words would be hard for everybody to grab onto and go with, like, well, if you have this many, no, he makes that distinction, like tells them this, like, if they walk on 2 legs, that's your enemy. If they are 4-legged or have wings, good to go. All right, so that helps kind of settle it, all right, in black and white for everybody. So because he's not dealing with a bunch of geniuses. Again, this isn't a story about animals, so you have to think about it. People who are leaders, even revolutionary leaders, have to talk to the people that they lead, even the ones who are not the brightest light bulbs, and give them something simple to hang on to. And often the people in charge don't treat their followers like they are very smart, you know, and they get them started just yelling slogans at each other. Like, you know, snowflake, libtard, and redneck. Those aren't nice things. But if you get people to use one-word slurs at one another, that's really much more effective than having them talk out their differences and find out where they have common ground. Okay? So just like really, he's told them that 2 legs, no common ground, unless they have wings. And that's okay. All right. Moses, number 5, is an allegory. Oh, we haven't got there yet. I guess that's the next chapter. So that leads us to the end of this discussion. If there is something you don't understand, you have several options. You have summaries that you can go to online. You have other readings you can go to online. There are videos. I would suggest holding off on the videos until you've done enough of the reading that you can really tell where they're wrong, or off, I should say, not so much wrong. There are 2 really good videos that are listed in your resources, and by really good, I mean, the one from the 1950s is actually pretty close to the text in feeling and like what Orwell is trying to do for you. It's kind of rough around the edges animation, old school, but it does an okay job. The live action one from the 90s is more pleasant to watch. It gives a lot away at the beginning because it kind of like frames it with this weird afterward thing that they create, there's stuff in it that wasn't in the book, and a lot of squishing together characters that is kind of weird, so they can have a different narrative approach. But if you've read the book and then you watch those, you're like, oh, that's different. Oh, that's different. And that's good for your brain. It helps you understand things a little better. If you watch it and then you read the book, it's just going to be confusing. So do as much of the reading as you can before you resort to the video. And please, if there's something specific, come see me on a Thursday at 10:30 on Zoom and ask me what you want to know. All right. So there we go. Chapter 1. See you next time.